mechanism of transport across the cell membrane. Transport on the cell membrane. Transport is any process in which movement of matter and energy occurs from one part of system to another. If a substance can cross a membrane, the membrane is said to be permeable to that substance. If a substance is unable to pass the membrane, is impermeable to it. The plasma or cell membrane is selectively permeable in that it permits some particles to pass through while excluding others. Across the cell membrane without any assistance, substances can pass through if they lipid soluble and if they are of small particle size.
About the structure of cell membrane. First, what is cell membrane? Cell membrane is a thin, flexible lipid barrier that separates the content of the cell or organelles from its surrounding. Lipid bilayer. Lipid bilayer is formed by phospholipid that have polar hydrophilic and formed by phosphate head towards ECF and ICF. A non-polar hydrophobic and formed by the lipid tails toward the core of the plasma membrane. Within this lipid bilayer are membrane, carbohydrates, cholesterol, molecules, and most importantly, membrane protein. This is the outside cell. This is the example of protein and lipid bilayer inside cell, and this is the protein, then protein molecule, carbohydrate chain, protein molecule outside. This is the whole outside cell.
So now we are going through the membrane proteins. So here are some of the outlooks of the membrane proteins. So first is the peripheral, and second is the integral, third is the carriers, fourth is the pumps, fifth is the channels, sixth is the leaky, seventh is the gated, now followed by voltage, ligand, and mechanically. So here are the parts of the transport. So first is we are going to start with the passive transport. Then second is the osmosis. Third is the diffusion. Fourth is the simple transport. Fifth is the facilitated transport. Now we have the active transport, which has on the part of the primary and the secondary. Now followed by the primary and secondary, which is the co-transport, the counter-transport. Now last but not the least is the bulk transport. So here are the parts of the bulk transport. First is filtration. Second is vesicular. Now followed by the filtration and vesicular is the exocytosis. Now the fourth one is the endocytosis, and followed by the phagocytosis and the pinocytosis. Now passive transport. So what is passive transport? So passive transport is a means of moving biochemicals and other atomic molecular substance. So across the membrane, unlike active transport, this process does not involve chemical energy. So passive transport is dependent and not independent on the permeability of the cell membrane, which is in turn is dependent on the organization and characteristics of the membrane, lipids, and proteins. So the three main kinds of passive transport are simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis. So what is diffusion? So diffusion is a net movement material from an area of high concentration of that substance to an area with a lower concentration of that substance.
Diffusion means that kinetic movement of molecules or ions occurs through a membrane, opening ortho intermolecular spaces without any interaction with carrier proteins in membrane. Simple diffusion of lipid-soluble substance can take place through the lipid bilayer. It's rate dependent on how highly lipid-soluble it is. Example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and alcohol. Water and lipid-insoluble substance simply diffuse through protein channels, the number and size of openings available determining its rate. The protein channels involved in simple diffusion are distinguished by two important characteristics. One, they are often selectively permeable to certain substances. Second, many of the channels can be opened or closed by gates. So this is the simple diffusion illustrates the extracellular space and the lipid bilayer cell membrane. So, facilitated diffusion is also called a carrier-mediated diffusion because a substance transported in this manner diffuses through the membrane using a specific carrier protein to help. So, let's illustrate the process of diffusion. So the second, the carrier protein has a pore large enough to transport a specific molecule partway through. It also has a binding receptor on the inside of the protein carrier to which the molecule binds itself, causing it for conformational or chemical changes in the carrier protein so that the pore now opens up on the opposite side. The molecule is released because the binding force is weak and the thermal motion of the attached molecule causes it to break away. Carrier-mediated transport system display three characteristics determining the kind and amount of substance that will be transferred. So the first is specificity, the second is saturation, third is repetition.
Factors influencing the rate of net diffusion of a substance across a membrane or fixed law of diffusion. So, fixed law of diffusion. The net diffusion rate of a gas across a fluid membrane is proportional to the difference in concentration to the surface area of the membrane, to the permeability of the membrane to the substance, and inversely proportional to the thickness of the membrane and molecular weight of molecule. So here's the table, factor and effect on rate of net diffusion. So first is concentration gradient of substance. So his rate of net diffusion is increasing. So the next is permeability of membrane to substance. Its rate is increasing also. So surface area of membrane is increasing also. So molecular weight of substance is decreasing, and distance thickness is decreasing also.
Active transport. What is active transport? It is sometimes called active uptake. It's also the mediated transport of biochemicals and other atomic or molecular substances across membranes. This process requires the expenditure of cellular energy to move molecules uphill against a gradient.
It also involves the use of a protein carrier to transfer a specific substance across the membrane but against its concentration gradient. So, under the active transport, there is the primary active transport. This is when the energy is directly derived from breakdown of ATP to move a substance uphill. So, in this illustration, you can see the primary active transport. So, in the red arrow, you see the ATP is used to move a molecule or the sodium potassium pump outside the cell. So it requires the ATP. And next, in the next illustration, this is also a proton pump. So it's also used the ATP to move a certain molecule out from inside the cell out to outside the cell.
Let's start the last processes, the bulk transport. Bulk transport have two stages, filtration and vesicular transport. Filtration is movement of water and solute molecules across the cell membrane due to hydrostatic pressure generated by the cardiovascular system. It is a kind of transport in which fluid is forced through a membrane because of difference in pressure gradient in the two sides of membrane. It usually takes place against hydrostatic and osmotic colloid pressure. Vesicular transport is a mode of transport by which large particles are transported between the ACA and ICA by being wrapped in a membrane enclosed vesicles. A substance transported out by exocytosis and a substance taken is by endocytosis. Furthermore, specifically, if a large multimolecular substance is taken into it called phagocytosis. And if there is endocytosis of a fluid taking place, it is called pinocytosis. This is the example of endocytosis. Endocytosis wrap up with phagocytosis, pinocytosis, and receptor-mediated endocytosis. This is the example of phagocytosis. As you can see, the waveform in two waveform in the top, and in the pinocytosis, two waveform in the bottom, and in the receptor-mediated endocytosis, it does not wave, rather it just works.